All right, welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. This is Monday, May 12th, about 5:30 PM. It's time and place for the Grand Forks Committee of the Whole meeting. Item 1 is call to order.
Weigel.
Here.
Selsky.
Here.
Berg.
Here.
Lensky.
Here.
Friedolfs.
Here.
Bean.
Here.
President Sandy. Gotcha. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 2, informational items. There are none. Item 3 is discussion items. 3.1 is a request from Grand Forks Youth Hockey for approval of a site authorization in a designated 21-plus bar area at Little Bangkok. We have a motion approved by Osowski, second by Lunsky. Any further comments, Ms. Lunsky?
I couldn't figure out, is it going to be like a machine or a person?
I believe it's a machine, is what I gathered.
Thank you.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 3.2 is a request from River City Speedway for amendment to their Class 6 alcohol license. Motion to approve by Osowski, second by Berg. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. 3.3 is bid award for project 8928, upgrade lift station number 21 and 33. Good evening.
This is a bid award for the lift stations for the rehabs for 21 and 33. So for the general contract Schedule B, we received 2 bids, and the low bid was from ICS. And then for the Schedule A, ICS also included a bid that also used H&S, which had an error in their bid, and they asked to withdraw that bid. H&S also asked to withdraw their bid from Schedule B along with Northern Valley because they forgot a part included from the supplier. So that's kind of why I tried to spell it out in the staff report. And it's listed in the bid tab there. So we're asking to withdraw the two bids, one from H&S and one from Northern Valley, and award that electrical bid to Sun Electric. And then withdraw the Schedule A bid from ICS.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
We have a motion to approve by Osowski, second by Berg. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.4 is revised engineers report for project 8576, District 362, water main for Peony Addition and Highway 81 area Phase 2. Mr. Danielson.
Thank you, Vice President Weigel, members of the committee. So this is the water main project that we're looking to do this year up in the Highway 81 area that we've been working on for the past couple of years. What we're looking for approval for tonight is a revised engineers report. The original engineers report that you would have approved back in October had an estimate that went with it. And as we've developed the plans a little bit more, we've identified some highway crossings that we have to do with this project that have unique casing requirements on pretty large diameter pipe that have swung the estimate quite a bit to where we want to revise the engineer's report so that it is now consistent with the estimate that we've currently got. So the report that you would have approved back in October was at about 1.1 million. And with some of the changes that we've made as we've designed this project along the way, we're looking at about 1.68 at this point. A couple things to point out here is that this is a project that we're looking to submit an application to the State Water Commission for a 60% cost share on. And then the remaining is to be assessed to the city, and then we'll just cover it like we have been with all the other projects up there. So the only thing that we would need approval for tonight is to revise that report so that it reads consistent with an estimate that is current.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Comment?
So where does the extra $500,000, I realize 60% might be covered, but where does that extra money come from?
So the way that this one works, it kind of depends on the project, but with this one, because we're assessing ourselves and then funding it through an SRF loan, a state revolving fund loan, we would assess ourselves, which would put it on the timeline of an assessment over 20 or 30 years, and then that would get bought down by the SRF loan immediately behind that. So it's all paid back through loans, through an assessment to ourselves. It's kind of a confusing interaction there, but it's an assessment to ourselves paid back by a loan from the state.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lunsky. We have a motion to approve by Osowski, second by Berg. Seeing no further comment, Mr. Sandy, do you have anything or no? Okay. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Move on to, thank you, Mr. Danielson. 3.5 is redevelopment of former water treatment plant site. Mr. Phelan.
Council Vice President Weigel and members of the community of the whole. We're excited to be here this evening. We have representatives from Development Strategies. As you recall, about over a year ago, the City Council, we accepted Development Strategies as the firm to work on this project and to begin working on Phase 1. And they're here this evening to conclude Phase 1. Matt Wetley will be up here to give you a PowerPoint presentation and summarize that large report that's attached in particular. I just want to note, as part of the staff recommendation, what we're recommending this evening is, number one, that you'd accept their Phase 1 report. We're also asking to move forward with Phase 2, and we'll talk a little bit about what Phase 2 as part of the project is. There's also a consideration of 2 property acquisitions, and those are 2 lots that are nearest the northern reach of the water treatment plant. And then also to issue a request for qualifications for engineering services to begin the water treatment plant abatement and demolition. And Carmen, who was just up here a little bit ago, and Melanie have been working on that, so that's a request to do that work. And then as this project gets started, the funding will come from, since it's a water plant site, will come from 5300, which is your Water Works Enterprise Fund. It's just to give you some context, we've been probably at this for about 20 years, and so I'm going to say in and around 2005, the City Council, prior to you, determined that we would build a new water treatment plant site. New water plant on a new site, and that's the one you see west of town. That was a decision was made, and as opposed to redeveloping on this particular site. And they did it because it would be a constrained site, so they looked at going to a 100-year site, and that's what got us here today. And you can even see where these homes that are built along the other side of the water treatment plant, that was water plant property. And so when the City Council determined we're going to move forward with a new site, that was sold, and those homes went into place. The City Council reinvested into our existing water, into this old water treatment plant, about $2 million just to give it a 10-year run in 2007 and 8. And lo and behold, in about 2020, the new water plant was up and going, and this old water plant just got us across the finish line. So there's been a lot of work over 20 years. It's remarkable to be here in 2025. That we're here and we're ready for a redevelopment site. The other thing the City of Grand Forks did leading up to it, we wanted to make sure it was the right time to move forward with this project, and that's what Phase 2 is about. We wanted to make sure the city was growing and developing and really at a positive point where we could come back with the water plant. So we've deferred this project, waiting for things to develop at UND in the downtown and to have other large projects come that will really make this project make sense. And as you can see, in and around the city of Grand Forks, we're growing, lots of dynamic things are occurring, and really we think this time is now for us to move forward with the redevelopment of the site. I want to thank Councilmember Berg and Councilmember Veen, who served on your behalf as part of this working group, and I also see Bill Schoen is here too. He was another citizen that participated, and there's others that are noted on the staff report. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to go over the project itself. I'll come back for the last 2 slides just to ask what we're recommending for asking you to move forward to City Council next week. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan.
Thank you for that introduction, Todd. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We are so happy and grateful and thankful to be here tonight in front of all of you. The work that you asked us to do is the reason our organization exists, which is to help communities create strategies that are going to lead to projects that are going to come out of the ground that are development, but there's so much more than just a real estate project or real estate transaction. What you all asked us to do was help come up with a project that, yes, consists of development, but is going to contribute to achieving public goals, contribute to quality of life, create something of lasting value, something that folks can enjoy across the community, and also point to as something that is a source of pride. And every development has the opportunity to contribute something to the community. Every development has the potential to last 100 years or more. And so before moving forward, I think communities that apply intention and thoughtfulness are going to contribute more over time to their community. It's in that spirit that we understood that you all engaged with us, and we thank you. What I'm going to do is walk you through some of the highlights of this over, I'm going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. There is a phase one book with a lot more detail that's available. I'm going to kind of try to hit things at a high level and share with you some of the outcomes of this and some of the process that we undertook over the past year, not just ourselves, but truly with the community, with community leaders, stakeholders. It's been a truly collaborative process. And I'm going to start here with this image, which I think you're going to see a lot of images. No one image embodies all of what this project can achieve and what this and what this can catalyze. But this has a lot. This is an area where a lot of the elements can come together. This is really about providing access and views to the greenway, to the riverfront, and creating meaningful public space that belongs to everybody. A nexus, a hub where these different trails and connections to downtown can come together and create a true public space that belongs to everyone. And so what you see those public space elements. You also see development, opportunities for new residents to come and live downtown, opportunities for public art, and we think opportunities for distinctive retailers and vendors to contribute to this area as well. I'm going to share a lot more of these pictures in a minute, but what I'd like to do over the next 10 minutes is kind of take a step back and share with you all how we got there. And so it started out, our first meeting with the steering committee, a steering committee of true community leaders that really represented a diversity of interests. What unites all of them is their intense interest and care for this community. They told us some of the things that they wanted to see here. They wanted to see that access to the greenway, create those views, introduce more housing. They wanted a gateway to downtown and enhance connectivity. Everyone brought up the opportunity to vacate 3rd Street or imagine it as something other than what it is today. And I think importantly, they challenged us to do something big. That came through loud and clear. They did not want to see a development for development's sake. They wanted to see something that contributes to the community. Something we share everywhere we work. We view our work in this way. We're always trying to align these three things: value creation, value capture, and public benefit. Value creation are those things that are going to bring people to a place, bring people to a downtown. Public benefits can be defined in different ways. The community defines to us what public benefits are. We're looking for opportunities to capture value. If we're going to bring people downtown, and that usually involves development or involves economic activity. Something that's going to increase property values or create sales transactions that sort of lead to greater commerce and business. If we're going to make investments, we need something that's going to capture value, that's going to help pay for those investments. And that's and really everything that you're going to see represents an alignment of our best work, our best attempt at aligning these three elements. We had a great conversation around that with the steering committee. We also, very early on, we're sharing examples from other places. We're seeing all across the country communities linking in better ways than in the past, linking development and public space and waterfronts and trails. And these we are seeing over and over. These are the places that have the highest occupancy rates. They're helping employers get their employees to come back to the office when they have great locations like this. So there's something really special about having great public space, great recreative access and development, and if it's designed right, it can all contribute to the whole. We gave the committee at the earliest some just kind of broad options and approaches to take. We could do something that blends with the neighborhood, or something that goes more vertical, creates more revenue, or we could go big and really try to not just do something that goes vertical, but really activates and provides a different type of access to the waterfront or to the riverfront, to the greenway. All these things were important to the group. They wanted us to pay special sensitivity to the neighborhood, but they also encouraged us to go big. And I wanted to share this image because for us, this was, I think, our second visit, and we were standing up here on this levee wall, and this is where the opportunity really crystallized for us. So at this point, we're standing up on this wall. To my left would have been the skate park. It was a beautiful night. It was very, very heavily used that night, looking north toward downtown and thinking about what if we could elevate that 3rd Street somehow and make it, rather than a road, something that we could give to pedestrians and cyclists and residents and get over that flood wall and get these beautiful views that I could see from this spot. I could see the riverfront. Could we get everybody up here, and could it feel like something seamless, something that belongs to everyone? And we started coming up with ideas and strategies, working with the engineers. Some of these were some of the early ideas. Some of them worked, some of them we had to go back and refine, but we were working with that committee with some early concepts that involved building and commerce and public space and views and access. And we started dreaming of different elements that we could include with that. And then we had to take those dreams and then start putting those through the lenses of, is there market support for this idea? What are the economics of this? What policy goals are we achieving? Does this create the right kind of public space? That was in the early going. And from there, we went through a process of a 12-month process, essentially. I think 5 meetings with the steering committee, had a public meeting back in October or November, met with stakeholders, development community throughout to make sure we're getting the numbers right, getting the ideas right. Had a really promising meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers, back in March, and here we are here in May. Those initial public meetings were incredibly helpful and insightful, and you're going to see a lot of that reflected in this. And we had a web-based tool. We had a lot of participants give us thoughts, not just on the site, but on the district. Because as you recall, part of what you're going to see in that phase 1 book is kind of a broader strategy of how investments here can also translate into catalyzing a number of opportunities, I think, for the district as a whole. Just a very little bit of analysis. We did very thorough market analysis. It's one of my company's specialties. We saw like the most straightforward opportunities were for multifamily apartments. We did look at townhomes, and we looked at storefront retail. We thought the site could be a little challenged here in particular unless we created some kind of real anchoring amenity. We thought office would be a little bit challenged. These ideas don't preclude office or employment, but we didn't think that was as strong as an opportunity as housing. In terms of strategy, this is where we wanted to take a step back and say, we've got a site, but we've also got a district. And we, taking that input from the community, taking input from our steering committee, we wanted to create guiding principles to establish what opportunities could happen, not just on the site, but on the district as a whole, looking at place and development and connectivity and retail and housing and recreation. And importantly, what you'll see in the strategy is where these things are best likely to occur, because what we're not going to do is have all, the challenge some communities face is they'll try to pack every idea into a single development or a site. We think that's a mistake. We think it's better to think broadly about a district, and if you think more broadly, you can accomplish a lot more goals. Having said that, the site can accomplish a lot of these objectives. I think we had like 18 total, 20 total, and I think the site could accomplish almost half of those. But we wanted to look at get people thinking more broadly about development that could happen in phases beyond this first site development if connections are improved, and really create a better connection between the site and the downtown core. We worked with the committee. We subjected them to several rounds of economic discussions. This committee was great. They showed up for every meeting. They had lots of great questions. They gave us lots of insight. We looked at a number of economic alternatives, and we kind of settled on kind of a preferred three that, while no one project was going to pencil out without a public-private partnership, we had several that, through a combination of private investment and public investment, had the potential to create a surplus that, wouldn't just make the development happen, but would also create revenue that could be part of a funding strategy for some of these public improvements and public benefits. That was a big, important part of the process. A lot of ideas and strategies just didn't meet that threshold, and so we ended up focusing on these three that, as we worked with the committee, we said, there are things that can change over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Construction costs, lending that could break in favor of one project or the other. The important thing is there's several different alternatives that I think can accomplish a lot of goals and depending on specific circumstances. And so that's important to take away. We got really detailed into economic numbers. I won't go into
Can
all.
I ask a quick question? I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm so sorry to interrupt. If you go back to the previous slide, could you explain what a couple of those, what's the TIF remainder and the percent to public? What does that mean? I was looking through the document and I couldn't find that in the document either.
Sure, happy to explain that. And I want to get, I'm going to try to get my cursor here. So you're kind of talking about this row
Those-
here. So.
Yes, and the row below it.
So one of the things we're looking at is the, total development value, what it would cost to construct that, and what sort of fiscal benefit that would create, and what that could create in terms of a potential funding tool. What a TIF remainder means is that in each of these cases, what you're seeing is a project that, through use of economic development tools and incentives, we're able to construct projects that would essentially create more revenue than the development itself would require. And so that would be essentially the remainder of funds that the city could use to apply for some of these public benefit projects that we've outlined. And I've got a slide, just a couple more slides that sort of zeroes in on that a little more.
Okay, thank you. But again, percent to public, a real high level, what does percent to public mean?
Yeah, so out of, for example, then, so out of the sort of fiscal revenue, say, if we take this one line here, that a project could, this single project could create, it would leave a remainder that would amount to, could be applied to public improvements. That's 42%.
Thank you so much.
You bet. And so that's kind of where, that was the test. We wanted to create projects that would create that sort of, create a surplus of revenue. And this is kind of where we landed. We created projects that have a value. Each of them, because of how high quality I think they need to be, each of them are going to require some kind of public-private partnership with you all. But in the ones that bubble to the top would create a surplus of fiscal revenue and a TIF remainder. We also have very high-level cost estimates working with AE2 engineering that we were able to identify. These are going to require an additional level of cost estimation, but one of the key things being working with the Army Corps, there are different modifications that could be made that have very different cost implications. We're not sure that the lowest cost, they may prefer the lowest cost improvement, and if so, that's going to leave a lot of surplus revenue for public improvements, but the total tally is going to require some fundraising, some cobbling together of tools and phases, but this project can provide a very good start to funding some of these improvements. Now I want to share with you some of the pictures, the vision that was created. And this is more of you're going to see more granular detail in a second, but just to orient you all, right? So this is where 3rd Street would be today. This would be a new and enhanced, flood mitigation berm that would allow for kind of a seamless connection between public space and access to, we wanted to create access to the greenway that didn't require going around a flood wall, but rather a more direct connection. What you'll see is a transition down from height. The tallest parts of the buildings are going to have afford those views of the riverfront. We want to transition things down to a lower scale to better integrate with the neighborhood. And I'll show you a little bit of what that's going to look like with some of these before and after images. So this is kind of that first image. Imagine you're kind of standing up on a berm overlooking Minnesota, looking north. And this is that image I shared before, right? So this is what it would look like to elevate 3rd Street to a level that's now above a flood wall or a flood mitigation element. And we think this would create a great opportunity for commerce. This would create a destination that I think would bring people, would bring people downtown today that maybe don't come to downtown a lot. This is a true regional destination because of how special we think this space is, how special you all believe this space would be. So many of you all told us views of the river, access to that greenway, and we wholeheartedly agree, and we see this playing out in city after city. We want to show a winter view too. We know that the seasons change in Grand Forks, and that first conversation with the steering committee, one of the things that got them excited was thinking about something like this, having an opportunity downtown to have sledding, and maybe having a fire pit, having opportunities to roast marshmallows, things for family-friendly activities. That got people really excited. We got to think about year-round activities here, and so we wanted to share that thought. I want to share a few other images because I know one of the things folks expressed to us over and over again is great care and concern for the adjacent neighborhood. So this is a view. Imagine if you're looking down 4th Street from the other side of Minnesota, looking north. And we've got sort of, townhomes and things of a sort of a single family or townhome scale on one side of 4th Street. And this is an image. So when this kind of translates what the scale is from this development design that we've put forth, where it's really kind of a 3-story scale with a mix of uses, with opportunities for mixed use development at the ground floor, wide sidewalks. You think right now there's a water treatment plant there, right? This is an opportunity to have really both sides of the street being walkable, having shade in the summer with deciduous trees, and just a great experience for neighborhood residents as they're out on their evening walk. And we also, this is something to address in a later phase, but we just wanted to tease out the idea that 4th Street could be studied, and some of that space could be repurposed for something. It could be a bike lane. It could be on-street parking for those retailers. That would need to be explored further, but the idea of softening the traffic to make for better pedestrian crossings for neighborhood residents so they can get to this great public space. And I wanted to share this image as well. This was going back to that first image I shared with you, that idea with the skate park to the left. And we had this idea of we were trying to figure out how to get across Minnesota. We had this idea of creating a bridge that becomes really more than a street crossing. It becomes part of the experience, right? Because the area that we're kind of tentatively calling the high point, or that hub of activity, is the destination, but a great walk, a great greenway is about more than the destination. It's the trip there, and this is the idea of getting across that street in a way that's not just utilitarian, but becomes really part of the experience for everyone. And then we wanted to share with you one other image, which is this is looking at Franklin Avenue today, and so you're looking toward the river. That's the flood wall. Kind of in the backdrop, and we really were thinking about the opportunity to create an amenity for the neighborhood. And so this is kind of the early concept that we came up with. So really dedicating this right-of-way, rededicating it to the public domain, but making it a great pedestrian connection, a great public space that's sort of at grade with 4th Street. This is something, again, as we imagine neighborhood residents out for an evening walk, walking their dog, really creating a space that invites them into this project and really opens that up, creates that sort of east-west connection. And we also think that elevated amenity deck, we think it could be such a great attraction. We think creating connections that could absolutely support some amount visibility for potential ground floor retailers on Fourth. If you create enough of a destination, this could be a great place to have, smaller events and things of that nature as well, for the community. So it's something that we've ideated and got really excited about. And then this is really, last image is really, it's what we call a section diagram. It just shows you how all the different pieces come together. It's the whole project in kind of one image. So, going from the left, looking at, the scale of a home across from 4th Street. And we really want you to be able to see, how we've sort of tapered this development down. So on one side, it's, really maximizing value and taking advantage of those great waterfront views and adding to, I think, the sense of defined space for that great public amenity, and just kind of tapering up or tapering down depending on which direction you go. Having opportunities for, ground floor, streetscape and public space at grade on 4th Street, and then really, building meaningful public space up a story, essentially, to get folks over that flood protection system. So that is, that's, again, there's a lot more detail in the document, but I wanted to give you the highlights, and I think, let Todd take it from here.
Council Vice President Weigel, I'll just hit some of the next steps, and then I think the team will be available for some Q&A. So I think what we're trying to show is something the committee wanted, the working group wanted to have something bold and something everlasting. However, we wanted to be realistic. There's nothing worse than some planning level document that never gets implemented, so we didn't want to do that. So but at the same time, we didn't want to go small. Because we're not very good, and this is about as good as it can get, because that's boring and very Eeyore-ish. So we didn't want to do that, so we're trying to find the balance between those two things. We also want to understand this is a large site, and we want to show really the seriousness of the site, the legacy of the site, knowing that it's been there for 100 years for a water treatment plant site. I think the oldest part of the building was 1939, but the major construction part of the water treatment plant, currently, the old one, was 1956, 68, and 84, and that's a recognition of the city's growth. And, those are, the 56 and 68 were related to the Grand Forks Air Force Base growing and expanding, and so we needed additional capacity. 1984 was about regulatory requirements. And so in the same phase, we're not going to take that long to redevelop this site, but it's not intended just to build this all at once, but to build it in a thoughtful process, just as we did with the water treatment plant. So I wouldn't think of this as a 3-year project, but it is a multiple-year project. So really, the important part is we looked at the acquisition of if we can reasonably purchase some of the adjacent property. We think we're plus or minus in a reasonable spot for 2 lot acquisitions for properties. The other 2 were substantially higher than we had ever considered. Certainly when the city gets involved in a project that's a greater good, in this case this is a $100 million plus project, we do oftentimes pay more than market price for property, similar to what we did over here at the surface parking lot, where we bought a couple additional properties so that we could expand a city parking lot. And again, we paid much more than market value on those. We really wanted to focus on what we were going to do because we've held off on the mitigation and demolition of this water plant because we didn't want to under demolish the site or over demolish it. So we think we have a project where we can go out and do an RFQ and get a firm to really have a better understanding of what we're asking to do. So we think that now is the time to do that. We've done a lot of mitigation after the flood. We had to restart the water plant, and there were a lot of environmental regulations that we had to do, from asbestos to other things. So some of that has been done on the lower floors, but there's probably more to do on the mitigation perspective. The other thing we wanted to do, we wanted to blend the best of a request for qualifications and a request for I forgot the word. What's the P? Proposal, thank you. Council President Sandy's got me all confused on the Q and the P, so. So what we thought on, this is a concept, we think is a really strong concept, that we would first go to an RFQ to try to shortlist firms, or I would say development teams, And a development team is going to be a developer. It's obviously probably like to be an engineer. It's going to be an architect. It's going to be a variety to pick who the city council and maybe a selection team would think would be the best firms to move this concept forward. And they're likely to add further value to this concept of what ideas that they would bring. And we'd be able to shortlist firms, development teams. And then secondarily, then we'd do an RFP where we would ask for proposals. So once we shortlist, then we'd go to a proposal stage and then really pick what we think is the best proposal of those shortlisted firms. So kind of a two-step process, trying to get the best of everything, trying to get the best of ideas and the best of proposals in a two-step process. So really, that's what we're asking for. We're asking for development strategies. One of the reasons why we picked development strategies, they were a bit of an unknown firm to us, and from St. Louis, and so they've done a terrific job. We wanted a firm that could help guide the process. Not only if we were successful in phase one, we'd go to phase two, and they would be our support partner, but they wouldn't be part of the development team. And so we wanted to separate those two so that someone's not creating a proposal that eventually they're going to propose on. So I think we've done that in this case, that they're objective and they're really with the city team on that. So here's the kind of the timeline I just described. I think the RFQ and the RFP, that's probably a year-long process. At the same time, we'll be working on possibly acquisition. We'll be working on the mitigation and the demolition. And then ultimately, likely in 26 and 27, looking to how we can, as part of a larger master plan with the developer, how do we move forward with the actual development of the site? So it's going to be a few years, 2 to 3 years, before we get to actual development. Under kind of a thoughtful process, and it's taken us a while to get here, and we want to make sure whatever the city invests in this area, it works out really grandly for the next 100 years, just like our water plant has served the city of Grand Forks and the greater community. So with that, I would hand it over to the consultants, and they can answer any questions, and I'd certainly be available along with the city team to answer any questions. Vice
Thank you,
President
Mr.
White.
Fielding. Mayor Bachensky, real quick.
Yeah, could you go back quickly to the, it was kind of the finance, I just want to be more clear so the council kind of gets an understanding. It was with a slide that Dana had picked, President Sandy looked at originally, just. All right, so as you look at this, I think it's just important to point out for council that, so why is this important on a financial, right now this project pays, or this site pays zero in property tax. So when you see that number on a 25-year TIF, that's saying what that is going to pay in property tax over 25 years. So right now that number is zero. So there's a certain amount that's going to, after you take into account the rents and the revenue that the building is going to produce, there's going to be, some gap to make this be marketable for someone to build. So that's where you've got the difference between the 25-year and the TIF remainder. And when you have that TIF remainder, that's where we can put money towards the public plaza, towards pedestrian bridges, or keep it as tax revenue. One of those options would be available. But I think it's important to point out that's the increment. So when you see in a 25-year TIF right there, obviously the more value that, if you look at the 7-story, that's $162 million. That's going to produce $36 million in additional revenue that isn't being created today. Now, as you go through all the costs that it's going to take to do that TIF remainder, that's sort of that extra. So consider, if you see the 42%, consider this is going to need a 58% TIF, essentially, with 42%, going back to the city to be able to decide something else, whether we want to take it as revenue or use it as some sort of public improvement. So as you look at the projects, as they get bigger, there's more revenue, but there might be more costs as well. So we're going to have to kind of pick a sweet spot there and obviously get some developer to do it. But does that help everybody understand what the new revenue is? The TIF, the 25-year TIF is new revenue that doesn't exist today. So that's the benefit to the city, that we're able to create something that's paying nothing today. And then obviously you've got a cost because, and I'm going over it again, but you've got a cost because in order to build this, a developer has to want to build it, has to be able to make enough money to be able to build it. So they've done the market analysis and said there's a certain portion that's going to have to go back to the developer in order to make this happen. Then there's an additional amount that we can use for public improvements if we choose that that's going to be the route to go. If we choose that that's revenue that needs to come into our tax entities, we can certainly make that decision. But that's why this project is so crucial, and why it's so crucial that we do a lot of these TIF projects, because you have either no value or properties that are declining in value, and we have ways to create new value and offset our current taxpayers' expenses. So there's this is already on infrastructure, so there's not a new cost. This is new revenue without a new expense. Granted, the public spaces would have some maintenance and upkeep expenses, and how that lands, park district, city, Certainly, there's some expense there, but for the most part, we don't have to hire more police, more fire, more street plows. All that extra revenue is going to be coming back to the city. Does that make sense? Does everyone kind of get that? Am I saying that correctly as well?
100%.
Okay, thank you. Does that
you, Mayor.
help, President Sandy? I think you got it. I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Lisowski was next, then Ms. Lunsky. Well, you was first, you're second.
Oh, I'm second?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay, it's my turn. How much have we paid these people so far? How much have we paid you to do this? I see 200,
Justin's-
it can't go over $260,000, and I'm just wondering where we're at with that $260,000.
And Justin's more of our money person. He keeps track of our finances far more closely than me, but that sounds on par with what our contract is.
Mr. Conlon, did you have an answer to that question? I saw you.
And then another question I have is, like, are we going to have to pay them more? Is my other question.
Councilmember Osowski, well, Andy gets, so we did have an agreement up to a max, and Andy will, up to the 260 max, so it's hourly to a max. What we're proposing is under Phase 2, it would be an hourly to a max of to 100,000.
Ooh, an extra 100,000, huh?
Yep.
Ooh,
And that would carry us through.
You're expensive, aren't you?
I think if you look at their billing rates, they're reasonable billing rates. So you have local firms that are
Right.
billing at higher per hour fees than Development Strategies, despite being from St. Louis. Just FYI, when you look at those dollar amounts and what they're billing, you approve agreements on projects with local firms that are significantly higher than that. I think this Phase 2 would carry us out with this 100,000 and all the various tasks probably for the next 2 to 3 years. So I think this next phase will be less intense, but more drawn out, and there'll be more helping us facilitate the next steps.
Okay, I don't need,
Mr. Conlon,
and
just real quick, did you have that dollar amount that we paid?
Our latest invoice took us to just under 250,000, so we expect that last 10,000 and change in the next week or so, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Conlon.
okay. I guess when I voted to approve hiring these folks, this was not at all what I expected. I think, there were multiple comments on the council stating that we want owner-occupied buildings here. And I didn't see any of that presented at all. What I see is the biggest, grandest thing that you could put on that property. I'm going to kind of flip-flop all over the place because there is a lot of information. Number one, I do not agree with buying out homes in this area. I thought we were just going to take our current property, kind of give a general idea of what we would want, and then kind of hand that over to the developer with, a TIF. Like the TIF and the cost of the land is kind of, or the value of the land is a little bit the least of my concerns at this point after what I've been presented. He sat up here, he presented tearing down our flood wall. He presented closing down roads, elevating roads. Those are things that I do not think that we can afford at all. We have our All-True Sports Center that is over budget. Also, another thing proposed within this project is, to me, it looked like Epic 2.0. We have not finished our Epic project at all. Our public space isn't even finished. I don't know why we would invest in more additional public space when we already have public space that we just cannot even take care of. We have the Downtown Association taking care of our town square right now because our city staff just doesn't have the time or the energy to do it. We have about $6 million that people want to put on the other side of our flood wall that we're going to have to maintain. I do not think that we are in a situation where we can even afford to think about adding more public space because we can't take care of the public space that we have. Like I stated earlier, I was really hoping for I know I've talked to some other council members and stuff, and, you know, fourplexes or eightplexes. I was thinking like single-family homes, like even duplexes. The homes that were built across the street, where the city sold off that property and they built those single-family homes. I was thinking a nice little neighborhood like that, where I really want to see home ownership. We just approved, 2 or 3 TIFs for other apartment buildings in our community, and now we want to build more apartments. I'm really concerned about that. I think that we should take this opportunity with the land that we already own and really try to promote and encourage home ownership. I didn't see any of that taken into consideration at all on here. Let's see, I did like the trail part, you know, some nice walking trails. That's low maintenance, low cost. We could easily keep up with those. No more Epic, eightplex. We've already paid you $250,000 and now you want another $100,000 more. Question for Mr. Phelan. It's my understanding that we currently have, $6 million set aside to demo our water treatment plant?
Council Vice President Weigel and Councilmember Osowski, we have a drinking water state revolving loan fund
Okay.
for $6 million that we keep renewing each year just for the demolition of this facility.
Okay, so we have funds set aside
do.
for the demo?
We do.
I guess at this point, this is not at all what I thought that we directed these people to do. I guess I'm not a part of the committee or anything, but I disagree with this 100%. I think it's going to turn into another epic failure like we have over there, and it's going to cost us more money. I thought we were going to pay to demo it, the $6 million, maybe pay this guy $250,000 and kind of just give a contractor a general idea about what we want. I did not know that we are starting up a whole new project when we don't have any of our other projects finished at all. I think it is the wrong time for us to go down this general path. And then the other thing that I think sounded really concerning is we're being told that this is like another $100 million project.
It's right now, it's, the estimated value is $109 million.
I guess the only thing that I actually really agree with in this project or presentation is actually the demo of the water treatment plant. I mean, it needs to be demoed regardless. I say we move ahead with the demo. I think that we're moving this along way too quickly. I think we need to slow down, really look at funds and how we're going to fund this. We already are pulling out of and borrowing funds from other things just to build the All True Sports Center. I think this is the last thing that the city needs to really get involved with. I would like to see some home ownership, and it wasn't even brought up. And I think there were multiple people on the council who stated that when they were here last time. So, thank you.
Council Vice President Weigel and Mayor Councilmember, to Councilmember Osowski's points. Number one, I think we have we have so many positive things going on in our community. So I don't agree with those sentiments that we have all this negative energy going on in the community. In fact, we have positive energy in this community. So I don't buy any of those comments. And I don't think we didn't direct them to do, we directed them to work with this group, come back with ideas. They have presented to City Council. We did not direct them to do one thing or the other. So that's why I think under this, you have from 1 to 6. They did look at the town. If you look on the far left, it's all townhomes. So that was considered as part of this. So that was one of the options that were looked at. And so you can see where 3, 4, and 5 are the recommendations. And 3 in particular was the one that rose to the level. I would say, other than the other part of this is that I agree with that we should demo it. But again, if we're going to just do townhomes, we're probably going to demo the site less than if we were to build what we're planning to. It's going to be a different demolition. So that's why the important part is to agree on the concept of what we're going to do to move forward with the development, because that will help shape the demolition, the mitigation of the water treatment plant site. That's why we haven't moved forward. We're certainly asking the city council to move forward. And remember, as I said, this next phase is a two-step process. You're going to have a request for qualifications shortlist. You're going to have a request for proposals come forward to you. And so it's not as though we're going to start building this thing in the next 6 months. It's going to take a couple of years for us to get to this, but this kind of really sets the stage. I agree with that for phase 2 of this particular project.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Ms. Lunsky?
So I'm a little angry right now, so I'm going to try and not come across as anger, but we have so many public spaces in downtown Grand Forks that we have no control over right now. We don't have anyone who wants to program them. Well, that's a lie. The DDA wants to program them, but there's nobody else programming any events. We have people defacing our murals. We can't do anything about it. We can't prosecute them. They laugh at us when we come to clean it up because they just sit there. They smoke crack or meth. I don't know the difference. We have it on camera. We're not doing anything about it. People are drinking there. Why do we want more public spaces to maintain? We had 1 week that the police had overtime, and it helped for 1 week. So I disagree with not needing more police. I think we will need to increase that. I just do not see that we need more public space right now when nobody is doing anything with what we have. The traffic hasn't been considered. Adding all that traffic to 4th, going by Phoenix, it's an elementary school. I don't think that road can handle all this extra traffic. And I just don't understand why it has to be a developer, why we can't pass some of this tax savings on to the average Joe. If we had owner-built properties, I'm not saying that the owner has to physically build it, but if they could decide what they wanted to do, I think we could have a neighborhood that's not just every copy townhouse, but we could have smaller lots and let people build what they want and give them the savings instead of a developer. I'm a little disappointed too that it's an apartment building. I think condos, high-rise condos, I think people would be willing to pay for that view. That view is pretty amazing, but I'm really disappointed to just see apartments.
Thank you, Ms. Lunsky. Mr. Phelan?
Council Vice President Weigel, I think right now what they're saying is the apartments is something that is financially viable, but as we go through the request for qualifications and proposal, it doesn't preclude having, instead of some of these units be apartments or rental, to be owner occupied. This is the concept today, and it doesn't preclude other things. I think as part of the other thing is, it's certainly, if this goes all to townhomes, we're going to lose the view of the forks of the river. The other intent is really to give something back to the community. And that was what the walkway was, that was what the overlook of the river. And so if you didn't own a condo, you didn't own a townhome, you didn't own or rent an apartment, you would still have something that's coming back to you as part of this investment. And that was where the public amenities would be. And certainly, we have issues in our downtown that we need to work on. But again, I think we have so much more positive in our community than to the negatives, in my opinion. So that was the intent of the public amenities. Let's give something back to the common person that lives in the city of Grand Forks throughout the community, and not just allow people that have ownership or have as a developer have the rights to it all. That was the intent of the public amenities.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Mr. Friedholz?
Yes, thank you. Real quick comment. I know Rebecca keeps commenting that the sports center is over budget, but that's beside the point. What I think we need to focus here on is one of the things we talked about when this first came to the board was the Forks down in Winnipeg. We talked about how awesome it was, really a great quality of life thing that brought people together, businesses, homes. And I think that's the track we're heading. When we say we're already working a large project, you can work multiple projects in parallel. This is so far down the road that we're just looking ahead, and I think we need to make sure that the quality of life things, we continue to look at these and not just be so myopic that we're only looking at one project at a time. We really do need to plan. You'll see successful cities plan ahead, and it could be 5-10 years down the road, but we really do need to make a plan, and that's part of this. And I think the reason I agree with this going forward, there's a lot of work, trust me. I think home ownership is a great idea. I think we've talked about that before, but I think this is one plan that we really, to revitalize the whole entire area, look at the Greenway, and if you look at the Forks down over in Winnipeg, I think it's a really great symbiotic kind of a relationship that it would look very similar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friedolf. Mr. Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Marvel. I would agree with Mr. Field. We do have a lot of positivity in our community and a lot of really, really good things going on. So we should try to maintain that positivity while still asking hard and reasonable questions. Mr. Field, can you explain to me? You just said that if we went with condos, we lose the views of the Forks. Why is that? Why do you say, why can't we build a 5-story facility with owner-occupied spaces?
Council Vice President Weigel and Council President Sandy, the reason why I said that, I was referencing the public amenities. And so if we didn't include some of the public amenities, the only ones that would see the view would be those that, either rent an apartment or own a condo. And so that was the important part of incorporating some of those public amenities along 3rd Street so that people would have access to the river as part of their public amenity.
Why couldn't we still have that with condos?
I think you can. Yep. So what I'm saying is, when I was responding to Council Member Lunsky, right now it's proposed as all rentals as we go into it. I think some of those rentals could turn into owner occupied, but what I was referencing is the public amenities would be there, are proposed to be there regardless of that. I think what our consultant has provided to us, they don't know if those are financially viable right now, the condos themselves. That may turn out to be different once we go to market with this proposed plan, but I was referencing just the public amenities.
Okay, thank you. So, again, we're going to use the additional, so of course, we're in the documentation. And by the way, the Phase 1 document is really difficult to work with. I mean, it's essentially 2 pages wide that my printer won't print that size paper, and it's hard to follow along reading left to right across multiple pages. Anyway, it would have been, in my opinion, it would have been nicer if it would have been in some sort of format that is easier for people to digest, especially when it turns into a 160-page document that we're supposed to review in 2 days. The financing, the TIF, we're proposing 25 years, but there is additional revenue beyond what we think that the developer might need, right? So in theory, we wouldn't, if we decided we weren't going to do the public amenities, we wouldn't need to do a 25-year TIF. We could do a 15-year TIF, for example.
Council President Sandy, I think that there is some merit that, some of the amenities that go to the public are as part of some of the incentive that would go towards, I think.
Sure, to get a developer
Yeah.
to want to bring it forward, right, okay.
Yeah.
But just conceptually, I think that those numbers, the length of the TIF, and we could do a 25-year TIF at 60% or whatever. Todd, when did we start negotiating for the additional lots? And where is the money coming from to pay for that?
Council President Sandy, I think we've been at it with those adjacent property owners probably for the last few years, knowing that this development was occurring. So it's been on and off over the last few years. Probably even after, we've been on and off with those. If we got some opportunities to buy those adjacent properties for a reasonable amount, knowing that a redevelopment was occurring, that we would continue to engage. And so we've engaged with them. We thought this was like our last moment before we go to development, where that's why we included the 2 for consideration. We did include the other two, knowing that at some point you can only do so much, and if we move forward with a developer, there'd be opportunities for the developer to continue the engagement on those adjacent properties.
Do you know, are those homes owner occupied?
They're both rentals.
What about the other two? That we haven't come to
One is
terms
a
on?
shop on the, I'm going to say the northeast, and then on the northwest corner is a rental.
Was the concept that the redevelopment would include that space?
The concept, I mean, the entire concept is if we could take the entire 2 block as opposed to leaving some loose ends on the end within reason. That was the concept that we had.
Okay. And do you know, does anybody know how much vacant commercial space we have downtown right now?
We did look at, when we look at vacancy, we look at two things. We look at total vacancy and we look at really how much rental ready, how much is like ready to go, rental ready. So I would say prior to, we've got, project right across the street that's still in lease up. If I'm looking at the downtown core, occupancy is fairly high. I want to emphasize this project, we only put about 20,000 square feet of retail in there. It's a very small amount, but we placed it in a very impactful location with an assumption that if and only if an extraordinary amenity were created that would bring more people in downtown, which is what we've seen with some of these sort of greenway centric hubs. The assumption was the creation of that amenity would bring more spenders downtown. And I wouldn't recommend doing retail at this site if that amenity isn't created, because you want to make sure that you're supporting the rest of downtown. But this really is predicated under the assumption of creating something that's bringing people in that wouldn't normally come downtown, and that's what creates that sort of demand.
Sure. Another follow-up question, going for RFQ first and then RFP. So this whole concept of what we're talking about is dramatically different than what we typically do. City typically puts out an RFQ because we're purchasing something, and or an RFP because we're buying things. In this situation, we're not. We're actually selling a concept. And so when we're selling, why on earth would we ever want to reduce our potential list of customers? Why would we try to whittle down the number of people that can respond to our RFP?
So you're referencing the RFP process?
Correct. If we're selling something, why would we want to reduce the number of people that can buy from us?
Yeah, and I think certainly the city can take whichever approach it prefers. What we typically recommend an RFP process based on our interviews and relationships with a lot of high-quality developers that have told us over and over that they prefer that process. The RFQ has a lower barrier of effort. They would prefer to submit their qualifications and be shortlisted among a group of 3 or 4 that are then told, okay, here's sort of the parameters of the project and we'd like you to give us your best shot, versus going straight to an RFP. We've found that some of the most successful developers, they're the busiest, and they often will pass on submitting when it goes straight to an RFP because they feel like their chance might be 1 in 16. So we've talked to some of the highest quality developers, the ones that we've seen contribute the best quality products, that are civically minded, partner, great references with communities, and that's what they told us they prefer. So that's what's informing that recommendation for that strategy.
Are these developers located in and around Grand Forks?
Not specifically. No, these are, a lot of this is, honestly, it's a lot of it's anecdotal conversations when we have with developers and say, why didn't you submit on, we would have loved for you to submit on this project, or what's going to increase the likelihood of you submitting on a project for a community we're working in, and that was some of the feedback that we got.
Right, we certainly were paying you for your expertise, and I appreciate that you would bring that forward. I fundamentally disagree with that, but I appreciate that you have your opinion. I'm going to try to boil this down to what I think this is. We're trying to subsidize a developer to build something to our specifications. And we don't necessarily know at what cost today. So ultimately, the question is, what do we collectively want to build there? I was advocating for owner occupied. I wanted to put all the property out for sale, and have a developer come and tell us what we should build, or what the developer wants to build and ask for a TIF or whatever he or she needed to pull it off. Fundamentally, owning a home is the fastest way to prosperity. It's the fastest way to wealth generation. I think apartments are all well and good. We can build apartments all over town. We don't need to take the nicest piece of property that we have and ultimately build a bunch of rentals on it. Again, in my opinion, I'm not sold on the concept design for the condominiums, because I think we could go bigger. But I'm not convinced the condominiums are the right thing to build either. So I do appreciate all the hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Sandy. Mr. Veen, comments?
Yeah, I would. Thank you. Just a couple. I'm trying to highlight about 3 or 4 different items. One thing I'd like to fully address is the significance of the site. Being at the fork of the river, what gives Grand Forks the name Grand Forks, really is a prominent part of our history and heritage. And one of the most important things for me was, if we rebuild at the site, which we are proposing, that it truly be something that accentuates where we've been and where we've come from, and also then looks to the future about where we want to go to. And I think that's something that I've brought up in committee, and I wanted to make sure that we accommodate. At the same time, we have to have something that's financially feasible. And so there's a balance there, but I wanted to make sure that we could get to that balance. Another item I wanted to address and ask questions on was the replacement of the flood wall with now looks like a combination wall and earthen levee, and some of the impacts from the Army Corps of Engineers. It sounded like Matt explained that there was good conversations with that. In the past, where we had earthen flood walls, we were able to raise them if need be, and I'm a little concerned about the elevation and the impact with the weight to what that might mean for the integrity of the flood protection system. So I do have a question on that. I don't know if you can answer that now, or if that's something that needs to be followed up on.
Yeah, go for it, and I'll let you know. Happy to respond.
Well, and if you would please, to that question about how the Corps of Engineers is satisfied with that design, and that accommodates, maintains the integrity of the flood protection system.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, because I think we've actually been, working with our engineers on 3 potential strategies. The Army Corps liked that we were looking at all 3. They didn't render an opinion on any one of those 3, one of which involves keeping the flood wall and involves cantilevers. And so I think there's different approaches that could be taken with different costs associated with them. I think the Corps, they're not going to approve anything that they don't find completely safe. And so, what you're seeing is sort of an artist's rendering of one approach that could be taken. We've effectively got 3 approaches, that all of which would create public space above the flood wall and sort of function in the same way. But but very, very different approaches underneath in terms of what the structure is, what the associated cost is. So, that would definitely be important in a future phase to explore those, to see which one or ones the Army Corps prefers or would approve. So more work to be done on that, but I think they felt like with our engineer that the three approaches they were taking were the ones they thought would be most likely to succeed and would want to see explored at some level.
Then another question had to do then with the parking. There are a lot of units here, and I know there's underground parking, which is going to at least help address partially. Can you talk a little bit more about how we were planning to address parking?
Yeah, sure. So the projects that we created assume kind of reasonable parking ratios, relative to the number of units that are being built. Some scenarios had some amount of underground parking. Most of the scenarios have, it's all parking that's internal to the project. Most of the scenarios we looked at actually had first floor parking. So that's part of the magic of the design here, where that's what gets that sort of gets the development up over the flood wall on the riverside. And so that sort of first floor would actually be a lot of the sort of structured parking that would serve not only the residents, but also some amount of retail as well.
Matt, I would assume, though, that's not enough parking. I mean, that's going to be, whether it's underground or if it's a surface like that, it's still under the building. How are we addressing all of the parking that would be with some of the larger number of units? Yeah,
the parking ratios that we were able to accommodate with the project were around one space per unit. Some of the projects that have recently been approved have been more in the 0.75 to 0.8 spaces per unit, at least in terms of underground parking. So we were trying to sort of meet or exceed the threshold that some recent projects achieved and what developers were telling us that they needed. We also looked at structured parking available for rent within a 1 or 2 or 3 block radius, which there is some additional capacity there as well. So we felt pretty comfortable with those numbers in terms of it being, a marketable project and not contributing to, sort of a parking shortage in the overall community.
Similarly, or along that line of thinking a little bit, is what's the traffic generation? Have we looked at that a little bit? We know as we look long-term, Minnesota Avenue, especially the Point Bridge, is going to have significant traffic beyond capacity. I was going to say, have we looked at all of what the impacts of this project would be on traffic volumes?
Yeah, so I think you've really well identified, I think, 2 things that are going to need to be further studied that we've looked at a high level. Again, working with our engineers, looking at 4th Street, for example, right, at a high level, it looks like that could accommodate the traffic. I think there would have to be further study about access and egress. I think it would definitely, what we've done with the design is create it in such a way that a lot of the access and egress could be, could occur not on Minnesota, but on, at 2 other access points potentially. But that would have to be, a lot of that would have to be reconciled in a more detailed way with the developer and that engineering. But traffic impacts would have to be studied further. The initial analysis or assessment from our data and the engineers said certainly 4th could accommodate the likely volume of traffic.
Okay. I want to give a little bit of a shout out to a colleague, Bill Schoen, who looked at just some back of napkin options for building orientation, in fact, that would allow a different, not instead of a parallel, a perpendicular orientation to give more people access to the view shed. What's the ability for something like that to be incorporated in another version?
Yeah, I think we were just we had a few conversations around that, and I think certainly some of those, we had also considered some of those, I would say horizontal or east-west orientations, and I think certainly as things go into the next level of detail and with the developer, I think as long as you're accommodating the same volume of sort of building area, I think some of those elements could certainly be explored and have merit and validity. One of the things that we were looking at is almost in any scenario, there's a flood mitigation element and a flood wall, a berm, whatever it is that's there isn't necessarily going to be a view shed from the community. What we were trying to focus on is how do we get people up over that in a sort of pedestrian-friendly and easily accessible way so they can have that sort of view shed. But I think there's nothing that would preclude looking at some different orientations of some of the wings of the building.
And I do want to agree with a number of people who've talked about the opportunity to have owner-occupied buildings on the site. I still like the idea of having some elevation to be able to take advantage of the view shed there, because it's one of the only locations like this, of course, in the city, and the fact that we would probably not just have apartment dwellers, but actually homeowners be able to enjoy that and possibly bring other aspects to it. I love the potential for the project. I've been supportive of tearing down the old building and looking at the potential to move into something new. My concern maybe right now is that I would like to see more answers to some of these questions that we've had, and maybe look at public input into the process so far, and see if we can tone in on a couple of these items and make sure we've got all of these facts before we would continue. But I do like the concept. I think we've made first initial step. I'm not quite sure what I'm ready to move it all the way forward yet, but I would be anxious to hear what the other council members say.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Bean. Mr. Phelan?
Certainly, we've obviously gotten a lot of comments and questions, so we'll respond by next week, before next week, to get those answers. And again, this is a conceptual, so we're not going to have all the details until at a further time, but we'll answer all the questions that we have that have come up this evening.
Mr. Phelan? Ms. Lunsky?
So you said no retail on the main level. What were you thinking would be on the main level then?
I'm not sure I said, I'm not sure I said that. I think I did say, so we've got sort of 4th Street and we've got 3rd Street, right? And so one of the things we wanted to do when we did our analysis, we didn't want to create something that's going to unduly compete with retail in the core of your downtown. And so from our perspective, I think doing ground floor on the entirety of 4th Street was something we wanted to avoid. We didn't want to create, I think I've heard some folks point to some projects that haven't been totally successful, and I think sometimes it's the mandating retail where it doesn't want to go is one of the challenges we wanted to avoid. But having said that, we thought we could do some targeted retail on 4th Street. 3rd, on that elevated walkway, we think that would be a very marketable opportunity for retail. So we showed retail on 3rd in a more limited amount on 4th Street that we think could be successful. So we always like to emphasize quality over quantity. Sometimes a small amount of retail, well-placed coffee shop on a corner of a building can have a lot more impact than an entire ground floor of retail where some of the space ends up being vacant or marginally occupied. So that's what we were trying to create. Certainly, as this moves forward, if there's a developer that has, strong retail relationships, this design wouldn't preclude, adding more retail. But part of what you're seeing is what we expect you to likely see from development proposals, and an attempt to arrange those in a way that we think would have the most benefit to the community in terms of location.
Thank you, Ms. Lunsky. Mayor? Something to
Yeah,
add?
first one, to just thank you guys for the work that you've done. I think it's extremely rude when we have consultants and people come here and they get treated poorly for the work that we've asked you to do. So just want to thank you for being, I want to thank the entire committee. There was a group of community members. There's been tremendous public input to this point. I think for the council, we've certainly got to decide, do we want a generational project that gives us the best chance to get our return back when we tear the building down? If we want to have owner occupied and small density, we have to know we're going to be doing that at a loss and we'll lose significant dollars. That's fine. I mean, if that's the route that council wants to go. I don't know, I guess I'll just point out the Ultra Sports Complex is $12.5 million under budget. The Epic project was a developer failure. They didn't get the public square done. We are collecting 100% tax revenue on that, so it's been a huge success for the city. The building's full. I think our police chief even lives in there right now. So a lot of work to be done clearly on this project. This is at the concept stage, so if you want to spend a ton of money and have all the answers to these questions, we can certainly spend a lot more. What we're hearing is we want to spend less, but we want all the answers. That's kind of a dichotomy we're not going to be able to solve today. So I think in the next week and going into next week, it'd be nice to hear, what direction does the council want to go? Do you want a generational project here that's the best financial solution for us? Or do we want to lower that density, do the lowest risk possible scenario? Or we always have the third option of leaving this building sitting there. I mean, certainly dying towns across the country do that with their buildings. We can join their company as well. But I think there's some work to be done in the next week to decide what direction we really want to go. Because there's no sense, if that's not what we want to do, there shouldn't be any more work done on sort of getting this concept tighter if it's not really anything that council's interested in. So I would kind of think about that so that next week, at least we know if this is not at all what we want to do, then let's scale it back and kind of end this relationship, because there's no sense in spending an extra $100,000 to take this further if that's where we're going to be at. So just my thoughts. And again, thank you everyone for making the trip all the way to Grand Forks from St. Louis and all the work you've done to get us to where we are today. It is what we asked you to do from the start, and that committee has done a great job and tried to bring something with all the feedback that they've gotten that they thought was best for the community. So I do hope they continue to work on this project as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to make a motion to receive and file.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Osowski to receive and file, and a second by, I think Lunsky was first. Further comment? Just to be clear, if we receive and file, it means we do nothing and it does not go to next Monday, correct? Or can you just explain that, Mr. Gostin?
No, it would go to the council next.
Okay.
That's just the recommendation to the city council. So it
Sounds
could be
good.
voted on again next Monday.
Perfect, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously to receive and file. We'll be back here next Monday. Item 3.6, amendment to city code relating on towing, which was postponed from March 17th, 2025. Ms. Lundmark.
Vice President Weigel, members of the Committee of the Whole, bringing this back, you had tabled it back in March for 2 months, so here we are. I'll just give a very brief recap. City of Grand Forks had some issues historically back in around 2010, 2011 with some predatory towing practices that were occurring in the community, and decided to pass an ordinance regulating towing of vehicles from private property that were, when they were parked somewhere they didn't belong. And it was not a vehicle owner generated tow request. At that time, the ordinance we put into place required licensing by any business who was going to be providing that service, and each of their drivers also had to hold a license. The ordinance also established the means of conduct for vehicles that were put into that impound after they were towed, as well as setting rates for both the various towing-related services that had to be provided, and rates and access for vehicles that were in the impound lot. We haven't reviewed this ordinance since 2011, which 15 years ago, or 14 years ago. A lot of things have changed in price. At this time, one of our licensees brought forward that based on changes in vehicle construction, vehicle operation, more all-wheel drive, a lot of things, it's a different job now than it was back in 2011. And so they're requesting consideration of a rate adjustment on those maximum fees allowable. Again, the fees that we set in ordinance are the maximum that can be charged. So any of our licensed providers could choose to charge less than the maximum allowable fee, just not more than that. The city doesn't have any revenue. We don't receive any part of this transaction. The transaction is purely between the towing company and the vehicle owner when they come to claim their car.
Thank you, Ms. Lundmark. Ms. Slensky.
So say I park at the bar and I leave and they want to tow my car. Is it displayed how much I will be charged?
There are rates in city code. I don't know that all of the rates for every type of tow are listed on those signs, but the signs clearly state that this vehicle is posted and unauthorized vehicles will be towed. It also lists who to contact. Those signs have to be posted at the entry to the lot. So when you park in there, I guess the expectation is that you're parking there with that knowledge that if you are improperly parking there, your vehicle may not be there when you come back.
And are we the only city that has this in North Dakota that has a max?
We are the only major city in North Dakota that has a max set that regulates any of this type of activity. Fargo, Bismarck, and Minot all do not regulate. They just let the fair market play out. That's what we used to have prior to 2011. But we did have a couple of towing operating companies in town that were not operating very properly, and that's what led to the establishment of this ordinance back in 2011.
And so who sets that, the building owner or the towing company?
The building owner would work with a towing company and establish a relationship with if a vehicle is here and I need it moved, this is who we're going to call, and that's what's posted on that sign. So when you come out and your vehicle's gone, you know who to call and where to go to get your vehicle back after you pay the appropriate fees. Some other, not just like our lots downtown, commercial lots, are not the only ones that use those. This would also pertain to apartment lots where sometimes people just abandon a vehicle, or there may be a time where an apartment owner needs, or a building owner needs to have a vehicle removed so they can do standard maintenance on their lot, and they've given proper notice to their tenants, and the tenants have chosen not to move their vehicles. And this gives them a means to get those vehicles off their property, and there's established rates for that.
Thank you, Ms. Slensky. Ms. Osowski.
Yeah, I guess I personally would be in support of getting rid of it altogether. I mean, and just letting kind of the free market take over, I wouldn't, okay, I motion to remove it then. And Tricia will second me.
So we have a motion to completely remove the caps altogether, and we have a second by Lunsky. Further comment? President Sandy, your hand's up. Oh, Ms.
I have one
Lundmark.
question too with the motion would just be, are you removing also the other protections that we put into code about access to the vehicles when they're in the impound and requiring the license for companies providing the service, or just removing the maximum rate caps?
What do other cities do? Do they have a code at all?
There are some that also do require some type of registration or licensing, and there are some that do have certain operational components in their city code. They just don't, they let the rates be what they are.
I guess I would be in favor of just removing the rates. I don't think we should put caps on private companies like that. I would like to see the free market take over. If we do, I mean, it's been 15 years now since we kind of had like the bad actors in our town, and it's my understanding, I don't think they're operating in our city anymore. So I'm in favor of just removing the cap, letting it play out. I guess if we start seeing complaints, then if we're not eliminating the entire code, we could easily just add the fee back in there, right, Mr. Gosted? Like, that would be an easy change?
It's an easy change as long as it has 2 readings by the then sitting council members. And as my understanding, the motion is Ms. Lundmark mentioned, it would be to remove subsection 3 from 21-0907 that specifies the cap. There's a couple other small, minor cleanups that we're going to propose to you that don't deal with the fee. We'd propose to you at the next council meeting too. Nothing dealing with the fees, but just to kind of clean things up a little bit from the code standpoint.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that clarify the motion, Ms. Lundmark?
Yeah.
Mr. Sandy, comments?
Ms. Lundmark, you were around back in 2011. Do you have recollection of what was happening and why this ordinance was put in place in the first place?
I do, Vice President Weigel, Council President Sandy, members of the committee. I do recall some of it. I wasn't intimately involved as the police department were back at that time, but there were incidents reported of vehicle towing companies trolling and driving around, just waiting for somebody to park in a lot so that they could pick it up and haul it away. And that led to us including in this ordinance the requirement that the property owner or manager had to call someone to come and remove a vehicle. And it eliminated that trolling looking for business. And some of the other instances that were brought to mind were people would go to claim their vehicle, left their purse in their vehicle, so that had their credit cards, all of their financial things. They had no way to get into their vehicle they weren't allowed to get in to remove their purse, so they had no way to pay, but they couldn't get the purse till they paid, can't get the card to pay. So also some of the fees were exorbitantly charged, and there was no real, there was no standard between who got charged what. And it led to a lot of angst in the community. There are members here from Interstate Towing that were in business during that time, and they actually were involved with the creation of the ordinance that we have today and working with city council members and city staff back then to come up with the current code that we have. So if they're available and would be willing to answer any other thoughts or concerns you would have as well.
Ms. Lundmark, I appreciate that. I have fond memories of those discussions that we had at City Council. And for those reasons, the implementation of this current plan made sense at the time, and I still think it makes sense. Just because I have no thought process that the folks from Interstate Towing or any other towing company are going to do anything nefarious today or even tomorrow. We don't know who's going to be in running Interstate Towing in 7 years or who's going to be starting a towing business in town. I think having the safety net with the maximums makes sense for the community. And so I won't be supporting this, and if it fails, I will move approval on the staff recommendation for the updated pricing. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sandy. Mr. Gostek, quick question for you. What is the fine or city ordinance related to a tow truck company operating without a license?
It would refer back to, let me see if I can find it's 21-0914, that if you are operating without a license, it's a fine not to exceed $1,000 and have their license revoked. I wanted to bring up one other point, is that the concern by Ms. Lundmark about the tow people just driving around and seeing, gee, they don't have a tag in that particular lot. That's one of the cleanup items that we want to add, that it's going to include that the owner of that particular private lot has made a specific request. So you're not just going out and looking for work, so to speak. If that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Gostek.
Mr.
President
Weigel?
Sandy?
With that change, as noted by Mr. Gostek, then I am actually okay with the motion as stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. Berg dissents. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you to the folks from Interstate for being here tonight to potentially answer any questions we might have. Move on to item number 4, city council member discussions. Ms. Osowski, anything?
Yeah, I'm going to make one comment tonight. There were 2 people in the room that said that we were within budget on the All True Sports Center. Here's the way I look at it. If someone gave us a check for $100,000 and All True gave us a check for, $100 million, and All True gave us a check for $10 million, we would not be able to build this project. So therefore, we are over our budget. But it's been a beautiful past couple days here in Grand Forks, so I'm excited to get out and go outside. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osowski. Ms. Berg, anything?
No, thank you.
Ms. Lunsky, nothing. Mr. Veen?
Nothing.
Mr. Friedolfs?
Nothing.
President Sandy?
Well, thank you.
All right, I don't have anything. Is there a
I
motion to
move
adjourn
adjournment.
by Osowski, second by Berg? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.